Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on grief and loss. I'm happy to be joined by Justine �‌𝐞𝐫 from Tour of Kindness. So happy that she's here with me to talk about what is definitely going to be a heavier topic, but one that is been requested from our community and one that we unfortunately deal with at a higher level than some other communities that you may be involved in. So it is an important topic. And I think, as with everything we do, having a personal experience and someone relating that with you and to you is always helpful for me when I'm trying to manage stress or emotions or a situation. So that is something we hope to get through today and we hope to convey with you. I always, at the top, I have to put out our disclaimer so everyone knows that this session is for informational and educational purposes. It is definitely not intended to diagnose or treat any illness or condition. No one at CCA or Tour of Kindness can offer specific or individualized advice or therapy, but we will be sharing from our own experience. For medical advice and professional help, we suggest you contact your personal medical doctor or your craniofacial team. Please understand that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this program belong solely to the speakers and not necessarily to Children's Craniofacial Association, Tour of Kindness, or the speaker's schools, employers, organizations, committees, or other groups of individuals. And our purpose today, our objective, is we hope to offer a moment of hope and reprieve for those who are experiencing grief and the impact of losing someone they love. We want you to be able to connect with those in our craniofacial community who have lost a loved one and would like to feel less alone on this journey. So with that, Justine, I'd love you to say a few words about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am very honored to be here. The CCA community has been a big part of our lives. Our story goes back to 2015 when my youngest daughter was born. Her name was Quinn. She was born with Treacher-Collins syndrome, which affects the craniofacial, mid-range face and lower face. So she was diagnosed within a few days of birth. We went through and she needed a breathing tube, a tracheostomy tube, a G tube for feeding, hearing aids, and things such as that. And fast forward through several surgeries, as most of our community knows a lot about. We got to the point where we were able to take her trach out, so we were able to decan, and that was a success. Everything was going well, and in the winter, the last month of 2018, we lost Quinn. She passed away, and she was 3 years old at the time. It was right around supper time. We were all home. We worked tirelessly to try and save her. But truthfully, we were never made aware, even through autopsies and stuff, of why she passed away. At the time, it appeared that it was like her heart just kind of gave out. But at the same point in time, that's not a typical Treacher-Collins diagnosis by any means. And we never really got the answer to why this happened. Which can be incredibly frustrating. And I know a lot of you who are going to be using this resource and using us are probably in the same boat. That being said, I'm honored to be here. I want you guys all to know that, Erica and I are going to share our stories. And we are here as resources. So if you do ever need to talk about anything to another mother who has been through this, or another person that has experienced loss, that is open to discussing, to crying, to being mad, to sharing the memories and the good times, you can reach out to me always. You can find me at tourofkindness.com. That's an organization that Quinn and our family had started up, and we still continue to advocate for kindness and inclusion through that. But just know that Erica and I, and there's so many others in our communities that we're here for you. So I just want you guys to know that, it's as simple as an email, and we can set up a time to visit, and we're here. So Eric and I are going to talk about some different things that we've been through today. to hopefully give you a little bit of, I don't want to say guidance necessarily, but just some ideas of, how to handle grief and loss and what has worked and what hasn't worked, and things that we have found beneficial that hopefully will help you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Justine. And we still are so sorry for your loss. And I am so glad that you're keeping Quinn's memory alive and her legacy. And I really resonated when you said, we are willing to be mad with you. We are willing to cry with you. That's how I feel. And I did want to mention just at the top of this webinar, we are both experiencing, maybe you would call secondhand grief, but also very real and valid grief over the loss of PJ 𝐓𝐰𝐢𝐭𝐚𝐠𝐫, and just seeing, his family and his mom, Crystal, go through this loss. We spoke before we started recording. It has absolutely wrecked both of us. And it is a special kind of connection that we share in this community. And when one of us loses another of our kids, like we literally say, our kids, it's a deep emotion and it hurts very deep. And so we are willing to be in that space with you, both of us. You can email either of us. A little story of my experience with grief is I lost my sister just over a year ago. And I always said, as part of my work of CCA, our siblings are our first friends and our fiercest advocates. And that's what my sister was for me. Even though she was 5 years younger, that girl would go to bat. If someone had a snide remark, she was there just roaring at them. And so we were very close. And I lost my sister after a long struggle with addiction. This is one that I think is very different from losing a child to a medical illness. And so we come representing very different journeys, and we're happy to share whichever one. And it doesn't apply to all the journeys. There's so many different grief journeys. And some of our resources we'll point to later. You can find one that's really tailored for you, but going through it and then experiencing again, this may be a little bit of a raw webinar for both of us. So to our watchers, if we seem a little additionally extra emotional, just know we are all reeling from the loss of PJ, and we are just praying for the comfort of his mom, Crystal, as she continues in the very fresh days after this to struggle through the next rest of her time. Because grief is a very long, lifelong journey. So with that said, in that heavy moment, I'd like to remind everyone, you can watch this at your own pace. The pause button exists for that reason. You can come back to it if you hear something you like and want to share it with somebody else. Grief comes in waves. I have had moments that were so much more intense a year later than at the beginning. And then I've had, all in between. And I'm sure you have too, Justine. Like, grief is very tricky, and it does not operate on any sort of schedule that some people may tell you it does, that you may think it does. It has to be dealt with when it comes. It is so important. Reach out for help if you need it. There is always someone willing to speak with you and talk to you and be with you. Another amazing resource that happened just this year is 988. So if you're in a very dark place, you can call 988, like 911, and you will be instantly connected with someone as well. It's a very warm line, like a hotline. It's a warm line. Someone is on the other end of it. And just remember, you're not alone. That's the whole point of this webinar, is that you are not alone. One thing I wanted to point out is a lot of people say time heals all wounds. Well, I don't agree with that statement. This is Tonkin's model of grief, and I have found this a little bit helpful. The grief doesn't get smaller. The grief is always the grief, because it represents the immense love you had for the person. That love doesn't go away. You don't love someone less over time, especially a family member. And your grief doesn't get smaller, but you do grow around it. And you can have hope. If you're in that very fresh stage, it never gets smaller, but you do get bigger. And you maybe don't want to, but if you stick with it and you stay with it, you will be able to grow around it. So that has always been a helpful visual to me. How do you relate to that, Justine?
You know, Erica, I think that we get told in those moments of loss so many different things, and people are trying to be so supportive, especially especially when we're in that first stage right there where you know, we're just, the grief is so overwhelming, taking up everything in us. And you know, so many people try and be so helpful, and that's great, but sometimes you have to give it that time to allow yourself to grow. And I know I found it very hard to allow myself that. I'm so thankful that in my situation, I had two other children that were older than Quinn, so Nora and Cody. And you know, we're a ranch family. Disclaimer. So we know life and death as far as that goes. It's very real. It was very real for my kids immediately. Um, and I think that the biggest thing looking at like this model of grief right here is there are still in your life, there's going to be some part of your life that can't stop. During that initial stage where grief is so overwhelming, and those first few weeks, I found it incredibly beneficial to remind myself that I have I am blessed with two other children. I am blessed with livestock. And I don't say that in a way to diminish losing Quinn, but it kept us going. Those cows can't feed themselves. At that point in time, Nora and Cody were still little. They were not independent. They needed us still. And I think one of the biggest things that you can do in those first few weeks is try your best to focus on where your need is in life. Like, you know, for us as medical parents, and Erica, I know it's a little different for you, but for us as medical parents, especially when we have more than one child, your child that has medical things takes up a whole lot of your time. And so for me, it was focusing on, okay, my grief is overwhelming, but yet I still have to concentrate and focus on other things in our life. The cows still need fed, the kids still need cared for. And I think for me, that was the watering of the plant, essentially, in this model. That was the part of what, you know, my grief is still there to this day. And, you know, we're 4 years past, but I also have had to continue to grow. And sometimes you sit back and you're like, I shouldn't even be doing this because Quinn is not here. This is not right. But it is. And I think as soon as you can realize that and find kind of the needs that will assist you in moving forward. So where else are you needed in life? You can water that plant just a little bit each day to make sure that you continue going, because there are people that need you in their lives. And I think, you know, I think that's exactly what this model of grief is showing. And it's going to take time, and it's still taking time. You know, I don't even know if I'm into that second realm of our picture here, but you know, if you can grant yourself the, what do I want to say, the space, to allow yourself, to grow through your grief, I think you're going to find a little bit, more transitional space to continue growing. Some of us can get so down, and I did for a long. I was thankful I was able to meet with a therapist and take care of mental health first and foremost, because I was able to go in to a family therapist with my children, and my husband, and we went in as a group. And I think that is really a huge kickoff. And again, being from a ranch family and in the middle of the Midwest, that's not exactly, you know, I mean, sometimes that's scrutinized, but at the same point in time, the best thing that we can do when we are going through these serious points of grief and the darkest parts of our lives so far is to get help from a professional. And I was so glad that I was highly encouraged to do that and could find somebody that would take us all as a family together to start with, and to move through some of that with a professional instead of hunkering down, which is kind of typical of agricultural people. And we're going to tough it out. And I'm so glad that I had a resource near me that said, we're going to get you set up. And if you guys need that resource, know that Erica and I are here and we will help you find those resources.
Absolutely. I think every year we get a little bit closer to finding better networks of how we can help connect people with therapists that they resonate with. And I'm happy to say that it's getting better and better. We are not blanketed the whole United States yet, but between the area that Justine represents and the areas that we represent, I think we're getting a better idea of at least helping you get your foot in the door, literally, and then the real work starts. But it's a big effort to get yourself there. So absolutely.
Agreed.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'll share my next little image because Megan Devine is an author that has written, I don't know if it's new, but it's relatively new. It's Okay to Not Be Okay, a book on grief. And I think a lot of people are really resonating with it. One of the things that stood out to me is that her quote says, "Some things cannot be fixed. They can only be carried. Grief like yours, love like yours can only be carried." And when I read this, I remember seeing in my head images kind of like this. And I was like, yeah, this is what the journey feels like. Like some days I feel very alone. Like I'm this man on this mountain and I'm freezing cold and I'm isolated and I don't know why I have everything that could sustain me on my back that I have to carry. But it's like, that's how I feel some days. And then other days I'm like this man carrying a pile of trash. And I'm like, this is wrong. This is a pile of trash. I don't want to carry this. Like one is very noble. And it's like, yes, I'm carrying this love, but I'm alone and I'm cold. And this other one is like, no, this is a pile of hot garbage and I don't want to carry it, but I don't have a choice. So that's my little relation to these images. I don't know, Justine, if it's been similar, if you have another image that you relate to.
I really like this one because to me that is so telling, Erica. I have to admit I have not read this book yet. I should. You got to get some spare time somewhere in there. You know, I know we're all like swamped, but sometimes we can find books that we really resonate with and really help us through these times. You know, for me, when I look at, like, if I was to look at like an image of grief, you know, some days it's such a weight that you don't even want to roll out of bed. But that being said, I encourage you all to find something that is worth rolling out of bed for. And maybe it's as simple as getting up for that cup of coffee in the morning. Sometimes that's what it is for me. If I know my Folgers is on, I can pull this off. I can get up, I can get my kids to school, I can go to work, I can do this. And other days it's like, you know what? I'm going to take a mental health day. I'm going to take a day for myself. But when I do that, I grant myself that leeway, that time for me, which usually ends up being laundry. How does that happen for us moms? It just happens. But it's a time for me where I don't have, my house is not bustling. It's a time for me to reflect. And then I also remind myself, okay, I'm going to take this day for me. But you know what? I need to get back and my life is still existing. I need to honor Quinn through that. My life is still existing. And quite frankly, she'd be pretty upset if I just quit. So I think we also have to look at it sometimes and put ourselves into that perspective. Like, you know, would they want me to just stop doing what I'm doing? No, they wouldn't. And so when I look at, you know, those images, it's like, we have a burden to carry, and there is everyone around us that is having a burden of some sort to carry. Everybody's is different. Nobody's grief is the same. We could all, and I say this in earnest because we in the 𝐓𝐷𝐷𝐿𝐼 community when we lost Quinn, just a few weeks before that, we lost Lewis. And Quinn and Lewis were real close to the same age. I knew his family very well. And I remember thinking to myself and reaching out to Lewis's family and them reaching out to me. And even though we had lost our children, they both had 𝐓𝐷𝐷𝐿𝐼, we had so much in common. Our grief was totally different. And I think we need to accept that nobody's grief is ever going to be exactly the same as somebody else's. But what I think Erica and I are here to do is to help you find a way to keep going. And recognize that however you are grieving, however you're handling your loss is the way that you need to handle your loss. Nobody can tell you to handle your loss some way else. They might try, no doubt. I'm sure Erica has experienced this, and probably a lot of you who are going to watch this can resonate with that right there. Somebody's going to tell you, well, it's been 4 years. Yeah, well, in my world, that's been 4 days. You don't get to tell anybody else how to handle their grief or when it's time to move on or what they should be doing. And if somebody does try and tell you that, say thanks for your information and move on, because you know what? This is your journey, nobody else's.
Yes, 100%. And that's perfect setup for the next quote that I think, when you, from the same book, when you try to take someone's pain away from them, you don't make it better. You just tell them it's not okay to talk about their pain. And
Yep.
so people will get into this later. If you're someone that loves someone that's grieving, maybe you're watching this and you're like, I need some insight, and we'll talk to you specifically a little bit later. But I think a lot of people are so worried that they don't reach out because they don't want to say the wrong thing. They want to say the right thing. And so we'll have some advice on that in a little bit too. But I think it's really important, if you can just remember, don't try to take their pain away. You want to be with them in their pain. Don't try to take their grief away or minimize it to help them move forward, because you can't. You're just telling them either it's not okay at all to talk, or they're like, well, I'm not going to talk to you. So especially if you're trying to be that support person, just remember, you're not trying to make their pain go away or better. You're just trying to sit next to them while they feel it. So thank you for pointing that out too.
Erica, one thing, one of the things that I try and remember for myself, and what I try and remember to remind others, when you are going through those deep, dark times, and they will come and go, like Erica said earlier, and if you are a support person or a friend or a family member, one of the best things you can do is just sit and be there. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to have this long, drawn out conversation. Follow the lead of the person who is experiencing the loss firsthand. One of the best things that probably happened in our first few weeks is after we buried Quinn, or went through all the services and all of that. After we got through all of that, I had a girlfriend come over who I wasn't all that close with, to be honest, but she had experienced some other losses in her life that, she stopped in, brought, I don't even remember, cookies or something. She knows I'm not a baker. So she's like, let's get her some chocolate and let's get, and she sat and she's like, let's put on a comedy. And she was just simply there for me. I mean, I talked here and there and she talked here and there, but we sat down and we watched a show and she made me laugh. And there was times where I felt guilty, but at the same point in time, she made it okay just by being there. And I think that's a big thing.
That is a huge thing. Oh, like I said, we're going to get emotional during this. But yeah, that is a perfect example of what it means to just be with someone. Now, just transitioning, because I know everybody's time is precious. I want to just list some things that stood out to me, and then Justine, I'll ask you to do the same, because I want people to know that it's okay. All of these things are very normal. So for me, and like I said, I'm just over a year out, total brain fog for a long time. I still have days where, like you said, you take that mental health day. I take that like mental, it's not working day. And it is really hard to get through that, because it is just, you just can't seem to think about anything, which the second one I say is like an inability to focus, even on things I used to love. It is just, it robs your bandwidth sometimes. And for a long time, it can last. But back to that comes in waves. I'm getting back to a much more normal pattern, and it doesn't happen as long. But when it happens now, I know I'm like, boy, this is one of those days where it's going to be a real challenge to focus. And if you have that ability, if you have that luxury to take some time the day, at least, 5 or 10 minutes to just breathe through it and say, this is going to be a tough day. I think it can help you know that that's normal. So I had that like brain fog. And then another one is, I would say, the irritability phase. Maybe that's technically the anger phase, but I remember that I was just, everything made me angry. And again, talking about our partners, like I remember like asking a therapist, like, okay, like I have to stop being so mean to my husband. Like I am just, everything he says is wrong, and it's not fair to him because it's not actually wrong. I just feel that way. And getting help for that is going to go a long way in maintaining those relationships you want, because like feeling guilty, it's like, why do I have this? Because I was also 8 months pregnant when my sister passed away. And so I was like, why do I have a new baby that I love? Why do I have a life? Why do I have this when, her child is not here with her? And so getting help so that you're not an absolute jerk to the people you love is important. And the people that love you, if they can just for a little while accept that you're going to go through probably a month to 3 months where I was just an absolute raging jerk to everyone. So it's hard for the partner. I would go through kind of in that same phase. I would go through getting really mad at what people said, but also appreciating that they were acknowledging her passing. So it's like, oh, why did you say that? But thank you so much for talking to me about it. Like it was just really a real contradiction, and that's perfectly normal. Another one we spoke about is developing an intense emotional connection to someone you weren't really close to before, who has experienced the same kind of loss as you or a similar loss. Like there's one friend in particular, and she and I were just acquaintances. And now I would say we are very, very close friends, which is one of my closest friends, because she told me after I lost my sister that she lost her brother, and we just bonded over that. And it's a bond that you don't really want, but it is a bond like no other. And then I guess the last two would be, I have this ability now, or this not ability, this want to create a shrine. And again, this is one of those ones that can kind of annoy partners for a while, and there's still a little bit, but for a while, our bookcase just became this growing shrine to my sister. And I know my husband was like, are we going to put anything else on that shelf? And he did. He let me do it. And as time has gone on, I've been able to edit it down, and it doesn't take over the entire half of the living room. But that is something that I have read is very normal for people. They want to enshrine every little thing that person touched, or that smelled like them, or that was a favorite. And if you're a partner, just let them have that space. It won't be forever. And now I feel better about refreshing it and editing it and putting a candle there, putting a flower there, but it doesn't have to be the whole half of the living room. And then the last one is one that you'll see us dealing with today. Other sadnesses are now magnified. Someone else's loss can take me to my knees, and I'm right back there. And that's that week after losing my sister. When I heard about PJ, I was right back in that same first week. I told my mom about PJ. I called her sobbing. She started throwing up. Like that's how intense her grief was, because she didn't want another mother to go through this. So you will always be a little bit changed. And that's okay. It makes us more human, I think. But be prepared for that. So what about you, Justine?
I think as far as things that really stood out for me, I went through a really angry phase, and I'm not an angry person. But I went through the point where I was mad at everybody, and it was fast. Like Quinn passed away, and driving home from all of that, driving back up the mountain, less than an hour. And it took us a long time to get up the mountain at that point, because that's just the way it is in the winter. And I remember telling my husband, I said, I'm not having a funeral. I said, this is not, and we were having some family struggles with exterior family, or, non-intermediate family. And I was like, this isn't for them. I don't want a funeral. I don't want to do this. No. I need the 7 people that loved and knew Quinn and were the rocks of our lives at that point, and that's it. Obviously that's not what happened. We ended up with 2 different services and things like that. And you just have to kind of move through that, because you know what? I think the biggest thing for me right away was realizing that she was my baby and I have to share her right now. I don't want to, but I had to share her, and that's okay. You have to give others the chance to mourn with you, even if you don't want it.
Yeah.
I think that's really, I think it's really important to note, because I was that parent and I was never like that. I am a people person. Ask Erica. She knows I'll talk to a brick wall. But it's one of those things where it was like, no. I am mad. I'm angry. I don't want anybody else. I don't want, no. But we moved through all of that. And I think that was really, really good. Erica talked about the brain fog. I think that's for real for anybody experiencing grief, especially in those first months, that first year even. I mean, you go through these points in time where, and I remember doing this because it's like, you're still back to work. You're still going, I mean, you still have family to take care of. You still have all of these things. And I remember like driving places, and this is really unsafe to say, but I'm like, oh, I'm here. Where did that 3 hours go? Like, and you make it there. And I think that's really, I think it's good to be aware of that and know that that's very normal. I think that's, it's our brain's way of protecting us, even though we don't realize it's happening. Other things that really stood out for me was I really struggled, and I still struggle to this day, with people saying, well, there's, God had his reasons. And I'm like, okay, if you can give me some, that'd be great. And we're from a Native community on my husband's side, and so there's a lot of dark, deep trauma that goes with that generational trauma things there, and so it's really kind of get some dark humor in. But at the same point in time, it's that dark humor that I felt that drug me out. It drug me out of the hole sometimes, and as much as I didn't want it to, like, I shouldn't be laughing at this. This isn't, but at the same point in time, it's like, how can you not? Because I mean, remember when Quinn did this, and then you're laughing and you're like, she's only been gone for, like 6 months. I can't be. And then it's like, yeah, you can. Because you can remember her or the person that you lost any way, shape, and form that works for you. Yeah. And if it makes you laugh, great. If it makes you cry, great. If you need somebody to laugh and cry with, we're here. We are here. And I think that other things that really stood out to me, and Erica, sorry, this is going to be a little bit right at your heartstrings, but the things that stood out for me was to really be cognizant of, I am not the only one that lost Quinn. Her brother and sister lost her, and that is something I've never experienced. And it's a different experience than a parent losing a child, is a sibling losing their sibling. And I think it's really, really worthwhile if you have a child that is experiencing the loss of grandma, grandpa, sibling, mom, dad, whatever it happens to be. There's things called play therapy. My kids, 4 years later, we took a year of therapy off, and they asked this year, after a move to a new school and all of this, if they could get back into therapy. And I'm like, thank you. I think it's great when we can teach our children, when they're mourning something and don't know how to cope with it, let's get some help to them. So I think that was very apparent and very aware. One other thing I want to add to that, Erica, is every person going through grief knows somebody else who's gone through similar grief, right? And we compare and contrast, or at least I do. That's just the analytical part of myself. Well, this is how they did it. And this is what worked for them. And this is what I don't want to do. And that's okay. You get to do that, but don't downgrade anybody else or how they're handling their grief, ever. Because you don't want to experience that. And I certainly don't want to make anybody else feel like, well, you should grieve the way I do. And they're like, actually, you're crazy. And I'm like, yes, I am. This is what I do. But just know that everybody has different ways to grieve, and they are all okay.
Absolutely. Yes. That is so important. And it's amazing. Like, I had not even thought of that. Like, that's such a good point you brought up. You are not the only one that lost Quinn, because I feel like I give such reverence to the loss of a child. Sometimes I even say my grief is nothing in compared to yours, but I love that you're big enough, and you've grown enough to say that and realize that you're not the only one that lost her, and to make space for other people's grief is incredibly wonderful of you.
That was my husband, let's be honest. And this is why, if you have somebody in your life that you can trust, doesn't have to be a partner, doesn't have to be a spouse, but anybody in your life that that is your person. It might be your best friend from kindergarten. It might be somebody you met yesterday that you resonated with. But if you have somebody to help you through this, and if you don't, call me. I'll do my best. I'll be as honest as the day is long with you. Find somebody to help you, because you know what? It takes more than us just to get through life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a wonderful point. And on that note, I think my next little list is things that helped. Things that really helped me. I have a few here. I would offer that when someone identified a significant loss that they had suffered, and they would just say very simply, I know you're in such pain. I lost my XYZ. I am so sorry. And they weren't comparing the loss. And it's like, but I knew in that moment, they're not scared. They're not scared of looking at grief in the eye. And then they were able to be quiet afterwards. They would just say, I'm so sorry. And, my one caveat there is I do recommend that it is a human. If you put that in there, pets are extremely important. And I do feel like a pet loss is huge, but I do say if you're going to be that person, it just helps. It helps to know if it's a human to human connection. Another really simple one, and this is one of those ones, if you're just a friend, someone sent me a candle that said, a light remains where a beautiful soul has gone. And I swear to you, that candle meant so much, because when I needed those few minutes to cry, I would light that candle and look at it. And I was like, this light represents all that love and sadness. And it was in my little shrine. And so if you're looking for something meaningful for someone, something like that continues to go and live on. It's a little bit different than flowers, but it was just so simple. And that gift has meant a lot to me. Another one was walking in nature. I found this to be necessary every morning, and it helped as soon as I had my daughter. I was like, we're going to get out and we're going to walk, because I have to move. I can't just lay here and be sad and put all this sadness into this tiny newborn baby. Like, she can't be the receptacle of my sadness. So put her in the stroller, and we're going to walk. And you can call this woo woo or silly, but I felt like my sister has a spirit animal that was a hawk, and being out in nature, I have never seen so many hawks in my life in the past year. I have so many stories. I could go on, and I won't, but feeling that connection to someone and being in that space. I had to go outside because the hawks, hopefully, maybe not going to fly in my home. But putting myself out there, moving slowly, just not, for some people it's exercise, but just a walk outside, moving the body, getting that sadness and that trauma out of me was huge. And then one thing that I listened to a lot on those walks was the Last Day podcast. It's called The Last Day. I highly recommend that to anyone it's more suited to losing an adult. And especially if they have died of some sort of sadness, such as died by suicide or opiate addiction. They focus on those two specifically, but they're expanding each season. So that has been very much a source of comfort of me, because I felt like now I know all those people on that podcast. And it's a really long podcast. You can go to it for almost a year and be with other people. So if you don't have a support group, that podcast is helpful. And then the last one is we started a supper club in my immediate family with some friends, and it was all people who had suffered a loss, and we called it the -1. separate club. So instead of bringing your plus club, we're a group of people that have all lost. And we don't do sad things, we just have dinner, but we're all getting together as people that get it. And so that has been helpful once you're past the initial phases, to reach out to those 2 or 3 people that inevitably, hopefully pop up in your life. Make it a point to get together with them monthly and just stay there for each other.
Erica, I love your list. I know one of the things that we had talked about at some point, or maybe I don't even know, but I think when we lose somebody, when anybody loses somebody, a lot of people try and push you one way or another, right? They want to influence you to, especially when it comes to religion, come back to the church, or, attend this or do this. And I cannot tell you how many we were sent, and we were in the Midwest again. And I struggled when Quinn was born with religion, and I grew up going to church. We're Lutheran, we're all baptized. My husband grew up in the community church. But number one, it wasn't really accessible. It was an hour and 10 minutes to church, one way. And so we just kind of not necessarily grew away from it, but, we found our own way to practice religion within our household. And when Quinn was born, one of the things, because that's a whole nother grief of its own. I want to recognize that right now. When you have a child or somebody in your family that is born with things that aren't typical, and the struggle is going to be real, sometimes you look and you're like, why was this chosen for her life, right? And so I've had to explain to people, because I kind of went the opposite direction of headed back to church. Not that I quit practicing religion by any means, but I had to explain it to my mom and my family that, it's not that I'm not in and of the faith. It's that my faith is broken right now. And that's okay. Things can be broken and be fixed. And it's accepting that and being able to tell people, like, my faith is broken right now, and that's okay. And if it's working for you, good, go do that. That's what's working for you. But I just want everybody to also know that it's okay to grieve whichever way that you can. When Erica talked about the candle, to me so one of my bosses, who was a mentor of mine, gave me a candle, and it was a beautiful candle. Like, I buy the cheap ones because I feel like always on a budget, and, but she gave me this beautiful, like, Yankee candle, right? Like, expensive one. And she gave it to me with a note that was similar. Whenever you're missing Quinn, light this candle. And I went through that candle. I don't even know if it lasted 3 months. It burned like the whole day, every day, all day. And I still have a candle, and I make sure to buy an expensive one. I'm like, yes, I'm going to buy a woodwick. I'm going to buy a Yankee one. This is in honor of Quinn. And it's those small little things as time moves you forward that make you grow, right? So I think the candle thing is a great idea. I think if you are looking for something to give to somebody that's going to be meaningful, that's a great one right there. And it stays with. Erica talked also about spirit animals. You're taking all of my stuff.
Oh, no.
So for Quinn, we always have thought of butterflies as her spirit animal, even when she was on Earth. It's the logo for the Tour of Kindness. Butterflies are each individual in and of themselves. Quinn was a very individual person. She had her very own attitude and mind, and she let you know things even at her ripe old age of 3. And so that still stands out. So I went through kind of a tattoo phase, and that's kind of therapy for me. So, I ended up with a couple different tattoos here and there, and that's good. That's me. But for my parents, it wasn't a butterfly. For my mom, she got like a cardinal. That was her representation. And for my dad, he's got a big old eagle, like a huge bald eagle. And, Erica, I loved you said, get outside. Get outside. I am not an outside person. I'm a ranch wife. I'm a ranch mom. I know I'm outside a lot. I am not an outside to enjoy nature person, but it is so worthwhile to get outside, go sit on the deck, even with your coffee, and just breathe in some fresh air. Get out of your house, go somewhere, even if it's just to Walmart or whatever it happens to be, just to get out a little bit. Shower. That was a big thing for me. Things that really helped me, taking a shower and then taking a bath. I had a great water heater during that time.
Yes. Important.
Right. And I would read, and I wouldn't read like self-help books. I mean, I'd read like Game of Thrones. We're gonna get really into fiction, we're gonna like things that are gonna make you forget, and take those 30 minutes to read a book that is gonna make you, feel better. But whatever it is, it doesn't have to be self-help, guys. Erica talked about podcasts. I got really into podcasts. Mine were not related to, my grief and my loss. They were more related to ranch comedy and true crime all the time. Not something I'm super proud of. Still addicted to it. It's fine. But it's something for me that makes me feel like, there's other people out there that are experiencing things, and I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one suffering. Everybody's got stuff they're suffering with. And we have to just be cognitive and aware of that, I think, at all times. Grief is hard. Grief, it comes in all shapes and sizes, whether it's a loss of a loved one or the loss of what was normal for you, what was a typical day in your life. And that could just be, we talk about loss in so many different ways. It's not just the loss of somebody. It could be the loss of your entire lifestyle. As a family, things changed. They're still so different. And it's recognizing that, and honestly, keeping the conversation open. And that is hard. It is so hard, guys. It's my husband really struggles with this, and I struggle with it, but my kids constantly, they want to talk about Quinn. They want to talk about the memories. They want to talk, what if Quinn was still with us? She'd be on the ski hill. She'd be doing this. She'd be crazy. And it's like, yes, she would. Like, she would. And we have to allow that space for those around us to also have their memories and their moments. And as much as sometimes that just honestly kills me a little bit inside to talk about the, what if Quinn was here? It's healthy. It's healthy to be able to do that. It's healthy to be able to still cry about it and know that my kids, like, they're still mourning, just like Erica. I mean, you're still mourning a sibling, which is, they're going to mourn that for the rest of their life. You're going to mourn that. We mourn for our entire lives, but it's how do we help each other through it? And we simply have to be there. And having those people surrounding you, like the -1 supper club, I'm like, oh, I could do that. That's a great idea. I could put that together, So I think it's the sharing.
It is. And that just opens up a whole nother thing. I've never thought about, like, other people. When you're in a family like that, your grief is not timed. So you may have a really bad day, but then 3 days later, one of your kids has a really bad day. And so it's so frustrating because you may feel like you're in this cycle of bad days and nobody's bad days are lining up. And so I think that just is what it is, I guess. But other people, your family, your extended family, knowing that and being there to kind of buffer if possible, like, okay, I'm going to take on this bad day and be with them. And then you take on the next bad, and just kind of spreading it out, because that's, when it's kind of just me, I have my bad days, but now I'm seeing that you're a mom to two other amazing people.
Yep.
And a partner to a.
And sometimes, Erica, I can't. And William and I talk about this. We talked about this in the NICU, because that's a whole nother series of grief.
Yeah.
But we can't both have bad days at the same time, right? Our kids get to have bad days whenever they want. That's their prerogative. We are there to support them. They don't know how to handle their little emotions, or their big emotions for that matter. But as long as one of us is there to kind of mold and give them the coping skills. And if I can't do it, guess what? I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone with grandma. I'm on the phone with their best friend, Lauren, who's like my little sister. I'm on the phone with somebody saying, hey, I need you to talk to Nora because I'm losing I'm losing it. I can't. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm sad, whatever it is. I need your help. And it's awesome to be able to find those people. And honestly, some of them are people that you're going to meet through this period of time, through your grief. And you're going to find those connections You know, Eric and I talked before this. We have connections with people across the world at this point that we've never met that are like our best friends. And I know I could call up, I could call Tiffany, I could call Meg, I could call a numerous set of people that I've never even face to face met and be like, I need you to talk to my daughter because I can't at this moment. And it's being able to find those people. And if you don't have those people, again, hi, I will talk to anybody and everybody. But I encourage you to look at your circle and see who's in it that you know that you trust. If you have those moments, and I've had them where I'm just like, Nora's having a really tough day, I've had a horrible day, and you know, dad's working and I need somebody to talk to this little human and keep her rolling and keep her talking, but I can't do it right now. And being able to say, hey, let's call Lauren. You need to FaceTime her, you know, or you need to FaceTime grandma. I think it's so important.
No, that is so, so important. And I think that, yeah, you've got to make that plan, and you don't have, if you're early in your stages, you don't have to make it, but it will make itself known to you, and make it a priority as you're taking care of all those things to line those people up. So thank you for sharing that, because that's an aspect I haven't even really considered. So thank you. I knew it would be right. I knew you would like have the things that I wanted to hear. Switching gears just a little bit. This is not mine, but I found this really helpful. Especially, you know, losing people around the holidays, very hard. And someone shared this with me. I do not remember who, but I think it is fantastic. It's how to handle the holidays, and it's 3 tips. So I think it's important to share them. Number 1, you got to schedule that time to break down. You can't schedule it, but you have to allow time for it. So know that it's probably coming. It may come in the days before, it may come in the days after, but there will be a time where you need to check out and you need to be okay with it and warn your loved ones. And that goes exactly to what Justine was saying. Have some people on deck so that when that time overwhelms you, you've got someone they can call, they can FaceTime, they can sit with whoever else in your life might need that. And it is okay. Know this, you may want to retreat to a quiet room. If you're in a, you know, family member's house, you may want to leave entirely. You may not get out of bed one day, and that's okay. But it also might not happen. So don't feel guilty if you experience numbness more than being like an emotional mess. And then in that allowing that time to break down, don't overschedule yourself. Even if you're a person like me, who being busy is therapeutic, try to not be responsible for the busy things. So I know that my daughter is born on Christmas Eve, and then it's Christmas. And so I needed to learn this lesson, which I did not learn this year, but I will remember it for next year, is I can be busy, but I don't need to be responsible. I don't need to be the event planner, the caterer, and everything. I need to make sure that during those holidays, the event will keep going, even if I'm just an attendee there. Number 2 is incorporate your loved one in a meaningful way in the traditions or ceremonies. Our -1 supper club always sets an extra place setting at the table to represent our lost loved ones, buying gifts that you know that person would like, making a donation to a charity in their honor, eating their favorite foods, just whatever it may be, incorporate them into the current and standing traditions. And then this one was especially recommended if you have young kids, to start a new tradition. You can do something that honors the person you lost, like attending a candlelight service. And now, you know, my nephew, we go to the Angel Tree Memorial every year, and he's going to hold a candle now for 2 years, and we will do that every year. And then if possible, try to focus the new tradition on a positive note. Getting sparkly nails done, or paying for a birthday cake on hold on your loved one's birthday at the grocery store. These are all ways to be positive while starting a new tradition. And do you have anything to add on that, Justine?
Just a couple ideas that we ourselves have done. If you are watching this and are grieving for a child in your life, a few different things that we've incorporated as a family. So Quinn was born on November 11th and passed away on December 18th. So all holiday, man. I mean, just bam. It was all holidays all the time. And a few things that we have done since Quinn passed, for her both her birthday and for Christmas, we go to the angel tree, and we, because that's something that we did typically, but usually we just pick one kid. Now we pick two. So we pick a kid, the kids, whoever, or a family. But we always make sure to pick a child who would be about Quinn's age this year. And then we go and buy as though Quinn was alive, and that's what that child gets. And so we do that basically 2 different times, right before Thanksgiving for Quinn's birthday, and then right before Christmas. The other thing that we always do, and I don't know why, because the dog never actually eats the cake, but which is probably good. But so Holly is our dog that we've had since my oldest child was born. So she's going on 12, and she's amazing. She was Quinn's dog. I mean, she's been all the kids' dog, but she was Quinn's dog, hands down. And so the first year that after Quinn passed, we decided, the kids decided, not mom, but the kids decided that we were going to do an angel food cake every year on her birthday. And so we do. I suffer through trying to make an angel food cake. And I remind you guys, I'm not a baker, but I do it. I bake a homemade angel food cake every year on her birthday. We do the strawberries, the whipped cream, the sprinkles, the everything, throw it on there. And Holly, the dog, gets the first piece, which she licks one time, and then we end up throwing it away every year. But it's something that we do, and that's, you know, it helps my kids, it helps us. And I think the other thing that we do, because everything was so close to the holidays, Quinn always leaves the kids an ornament for Christmas Eve, you know, or like Christmas Day. So when they wake up, you know, we do the whole Christmas Santa, all of it. But right at the base of their stockings, there's always an ornament that is usually like a Disney one or whatever's hip and hop at that point in time, Harry Potter and things like that. But and then on the top of it, it says to Cody from Quinn, from, you know, that, and that's just something that I don't know why I started it. It just is. And the kids are going to have their whole, you know, they'll have an entire tree ready to go when they get to that age of ornaments from Quinn, essentially. And it's kind of our way of keeping them alive, you know, keeping them in our hearts and our thoughts and prayers, and know that, you know what, we miss you, but we're still pushing forward.
I love that. I love that. And then this wasn't even planned, but it made me think of something, because when we go on vacation now, here I am getting up in the camera. We always say, I wish Emily was with us. Why is she not here? And so I made up these little stickers, and she liked jellyfish and her name's in them. And so when we go somewhere, I mean, I'm definitely, especially not professionally, advertising vandalism or graffiti, but I maybe leave a little sticker in places where I know she would love. So
I love that.
Love it. These things that keep our loved ones alive and with us. So I guess, I mean, we literally could talk forever. I want to get to one thing that I alluded to earlier, because I think I am still trying to get better. So I'm going to pick your brain on this. How do you, how can partners support each other through this? Because I know that is very, very hard. And how can you remember to be a good partner, even when you're in something as intense as the grief that you've experienced?
Oh, well, thanks. Put me on the spot. I think the biggest thing is to keep your lines of communication open. One of the things that William and I talk a lot about, and we've talked a lot about it since that drive up the mountain, if you stop communicating with your loved one, you're going to have bigger problems on your hands, and you're going to want to stop. You're going to want to shut it down completely. Do your best to have sit-down suppers. And even if you don't have kids, I don't care, with your partner, with whoever your loved one is that you are going through this grief directly with, sit down, face each other, put the phones away, have supper, have lunch, whatever it happens to be, breakfast, if that's what works for you, and leave that space open to talk. Not just about your loss, but just about life, about, you know, like the crazy things that are happening in the world, just everything. Keep those lines of communication open. And it is so hard to do, because you both want to shut down. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to cry anymore. You're tired of it. Or if you're anything like me, I'm kind of like Erica said, I go a little bit numb and I'm like, meh, yep, we're just going to move past this. Also semi unhealthy. We need tears. Tears are good. They're part of our emotions. It's good to cry in those hot, like super hot baths where I'm reading awful books. I'm like bawling and it's great. And I become red faced anyway from the heat. So, I mean, I'm like, well, why not? I think keeping the forefront, and some of you are going to be watching this and you've probably lost, you may have lost your partner. And in those situations, I hope that you have somebody to surround you. I hope that you have somebody in your wheelhouse that you can go to for support. Be open and honest with yourself. If you're not open and honest with yourself, you can't be open and honest with your partner. You both are going to have bad days. If you see, like, if I see William really struggling, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna pull my poop in a group here, and I'm gonna put some jams on, and we're gonna, William's big deal is cleaning because he's crazy. And I'm like, we're gonna put some music on loud and we're gonna clean. This is what this is what's gonna get him through. I know that. For me, it's the opposite. He's like, I don't want to touch her with a 10-foot pole. Here's a bath. Here's your book. You do your thing. But it's getting to recognize those situations where, you can see your partner struggling or they can see you struggling, and finding out what works for you. And taking a bath isn't going to work for everybody. Cleaning isn't going to work for everybody. Going for a run isn't going to work for everybody. But if it's what works for you, make sure your partner knows that. That communication is huge, 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 huge. And that would be my biggest thing. Keep communicating, keep talking. As much as you want to shut down, don't. Just don't.
Yeah. No, that is wonderful. And I appreciate that so much. And to anybody out there who is like in that support role, it doesn't last forever. There will always be bad days that will surprise you, but the person will slowly come back. If you stay for them, they'll be forever changed, but they won't always be mean or a mess or whatever it is. They will emerge again, especially if you stay strong for them. So thank you for being strong. Hang in there, find your own support, find your own outlet. If you're not the person grieving, like you and William were grieving the same loss. And I think for other people supporting someone, it's not the same. I know we have a lot of step parents who aren't grieving the same as the parent. And it's not that their grief is less, but they're going to take the brunt of it in a different way. So I think that is really good to point out, the communication, letting them have their space, and finding your own thing as a support partner is helpful. What are some of the best and worst things you heard or that you can say? Just the gut reaction, that things definitely do not say, and things that are safe to say, in your opinion.
In my opinion, the best thing that you can say to somebody is tell them a memory of the person that is lost, a personal memory. If you don't have that, then you know what? Just say, I'm here for you. One of the biggest and best things that I think happened during all of our initial grieving, and when I say initial grieving, I mean that first week, 2 weeks, where you're planning a funeral and you're just like, you can't even function. Like, I don't even remember parts of those times. One of the best things for me was when we did the second funeral. So we had to do 2. We did one here in Montana and we did one back in South Dakota. It was what was appropriate for our situation. I hated all of it. That's fine. I can say that now. At the time, I was real mad. I can say it now. It's fine. And everybody deserved to get to have that. But one of the best things that went down through all of that, number one, we picked our own music, and I know the pastor that was in Montana was like, you want to do what? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. We're going to play Hallelujah from Shrek, not Hallelujah from the church, Hallelujah from Shrek, because Quinn loves Shrek. And he's like, okay. And so, it's those moments, and he's like, okay, you do your thing. I'm like, okay. But when we did the South Dakota services, the woman who we'd only met a couple times that did the services was a close friend of the big family, right? My husband's from a huge family. And so she's the preacher, pastor lady in the church there in the town of 500. So she knows everyone there. And so we're like, okay. So she came out that night. We had kind of a small family get together, and she came out that night and introduced herself. We visited, and she goes, all I can tell you is this sucks. Boom. Best words I'd heard all day. Best words I'd heard in a week. Yes, this sucks. And she started her sermon with that. And I think sometimes identifying the fact that, people realize that this time of your life sucks is one of the most gratifying things for me and our family. It's like, yeah, it does. There's no other words. One of the hardest things for me was, of course, I go back to God has a plan. That was something I really struggled with, because you took my 3-year-old. If God has a plan, I don't see it.
I have this card here, and it's so funny that you say that. And it's a postcard, and it says, if this is God's plan, God is a terrible planner.
Oh, my heart. My heart
yes. And in the little text, it says, no offense if you're reading this, God, you did a really good job on some other stuff like waterfalls and pandas.
I love it. I love it. I want to know where you got that card.
Yes. I will link it. It's like this little postcard set. It's
awesome. And I think that was the hardest thing for me, because number one, I mean, for 3 years, I had already felt like my faith was semi-broken. Why is my daughter the chosen one to have to go through all of this? And you do that as a parent with a kiddo with special needs and extra stuff. And why is my kid have to go through all this pain? What did she do? And so, yeah, I already had that broken faith. And then you got people coming up and saying, God has a plan. And I'm like, tell me more. Like, and then you really try not to get mean about it. You're like, oh, thank you, but really deep down inside, you're just like, tell me, I want to know. That is probably the worst for me. Now, for other people, that is healing. And so it's really knowing your audience. I mean, if you're at a funeral, you should probably know the person and know the family. And I think that is, and still to this day, sometimes having those comparisons is so rewarding. When somebody else says, I've been through child loss, even if it was like, I met a lady the other day, her child passed away 40 years ago, but her and I connected, and it wasn't like she was, it wasn't like a one-upper. And if you don't know what that means, it wasn't like, oh, well, I lost my child when she was 2. It's like, no. Like just that coming together and saying, you know what, I experienced a loss similar to yours, and I am mourning with you, is probably the best way that you can go about, showing that support if you don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I agree with both of those. Like, and if you just want to be safe and you haven't experienced a loss, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. And you can be quiet, like letting that uncomfortable silence hang. Like, you're not going to come up with some brilliant thing that's going to make them feel better. So don't try. Just let the silence be okay.
There's a poem out there, and I send it to people quite frequently when they do lose somebody. And if you want it, I'll find it, and just send me an email, tourofkindness@gmail. Say, I'm sorry poem, and I'll get it for you. But it basically goes in to say, like, I'm sorry for your loss, because we all say that, right? That's just a standard saying. I'm really sorry for your loss, but here's what I really mean. Like, I'm sorry you're not going to get these future moments. I'm sorry that you have lost a part of your heart. And it goes into this, and it's like, it's everything that when I say I'm sorry for your loss, what I feel. And so I share that with people, because I think that resonates more than I'm sorry for your loss as just a simple saying. But
I will need that, so I will email you. Thank you. I feel like there's so much more I want to cover, but I think we'll leave it here. It can be a discussion that goes on and on. Yep. Because
we can do more of this.
Yes.
And CCA, that you guys are going to do more of this, and there's going to be other people, and sorry, Erica, I cut you off, but if anybody needs anything, I mean, just know you have resources at your fingertips. If you don't know where to find them, you've got us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And is there a closing thought you want to leave with? And I have something that's probably going to make both of us cry. I have both of their pictures who this is in memory of. But I'll put that up and we can share just a closing thought to our community. But like you said, if you need resources, we're going to link some, we're going to add some, but you can also just reach out.
I think in closing, keep going. Just keep swimming, in the words of Dory. Just keep swimming, because you know what? You're needed, and your grief deserves you to keep going, and you deserve to honor the person that you lost by continuing down the path of your life and honoring them.
Yeah. 100%. Thank you so, so much. For doing this with me, for all the prep work that you did. Like, you answered so many questions. Like, when I first had this idea, I mean, it was probably almost 6 months ago. Like, it's been
I
a long
know.
time, and so many things have happened since then. So thank you for the prep work. Thank you for you keeping going, and you keeping going for your family, for your community, for Tour of Kindness, for the craniofacial community. Thank you for being vulnerable and telling your story. And that is the perfect words. Just hold on and keep going if you're out there. And if you need someone to talk to, you got a couple of talkers here. So
Yeah, you do. So just reach out if you need anything. We'll do our best to help.
awesome. Awesome.
Thanks, Erica, for putting this together. I sure appreciate it, honey.
Absolutely.